much better in the future than it has in the past. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Now, I'll ask our two members from industry. One message that you would like to leave this audience with, what would it be? Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the training issue, actually. I mean, when things go wrong on a ship, everybody tends to focus on the poor old captain and the crew. But they're just one element of the whole maritime adventure. There are many other people involved in a ship's operation, from the management of the ship, the charterers, and so on. There are a whole host of people. And there are just a couple of things I would like to focus on that we come across quite often in shipping casualties. There have been many, many bulk carriers which have suffered casualties. Some of them have been tragically lost with all hands. And sometimes it's been established that the ships have actually been loaded at a rate far in excess of their design capabilities. This is just to get them out of port as quickly as possible and on the voyage. Something's got to be done about that. With container ships, there's a problem that's going on every day of the year. Even as we speak, there are God knows how many millions of containers at sea, and a certain percentage of those containers have got wrongly declared weights and misdeclared contents. And very often, this doesn't make any difference whatsoever. The ship sails across the sea and arrives. It's when something goes wrong, it can be a serious problem. Sometimes there are chemicals and other hazardous cargoes which are stowed below decks, which should have an on-deck stowage, because they've been misdeclared as car parts or machinery parts or whatever. It can have very, very serious consequences. It can also have serious consequences with misdeclared weight, because of the problem that a salvor faces when he has to recover these containers from the ship itself. The EU...
So it's a whole spectrum of things that you would put in.
And I mean, there's just one other point I'd like to bring up, and that is in relation, it arises out of the ERICA. The EU has passed a directive on ship source pollution, which criminalizes accidental pollution from ships. It's coming into force at the moment. ISU is part of a coalition which challenged this directive because we feel it's gone too far. It breaches MARPOL and various other existing legal documents and systems. And what does concern us is that when a salvor gets involved with a casualty where there is pollution, where there has been an oil spill, very often it will actually get worse before it gets better. And salvor goes in there to stabilize the situation, to control the situation. What he doesn't want to find is that in the hunt to blame somebody, that he gets caught up in that net. He doesn't want to find that his salvage officer may be held and not allowed to leave the country, or that equipment may be held and not allowed to leave the country. Now, the solution for the salvor is really, it's up to him. It's up to each individual salvor what he does. But one possibility has to be that a salvor in future might decline to become involved with a casualty where there is pollution, when there is a real risk of pollution. And he might say, I'm only prepared to get involved if I have a hold harmless indemnity from you, Mr. Coastal State, and from your neighbors.
Well, is this problem, we can't go too much into this now, Mike, but is this problem something that has to be solved bilaterally, that is with each state, or is there a more general approach that you would suggest?
Well, I think it's in the hands of the EU and the member states. They can have what's called responder immunity, which exists already in a lot of conventions.
Okay. Gilles?
Yeah, I would say it's obvious that according to expert positions that managing a crisis is a matter of preparedness. And from the ship to the coast, from the ship owners through the charterers to the authorities and go to the NGOs, we all need now to exchange all the success story and added values. And I believe that the solution, and it's time now, to quickly exchange and to organize all the preparedness of the transport and to make the maritime transport safer.
Thank you, Gilles. Stefan.
Yes, if I understand correctly, I'm supposed to address the issue of the...
You better address the issue that was asked you.
Yes, with regard to what IMO can do, with regard to addressing the issue of the Straits of Bonifacio. In my view, I think, and this is my personal view, one would have to respect the issue of freedom of navigation and the rights of innocent passage. With regard to the way IMO functions, and when we say IMO, one has to make a distinction between the Secretariat and member states, which is really the IMO. I would say that, you know, France would have to bring a proposal to the IMO, probably at the navigation subcommittee, and the issue would be discussed there, and a position taken by consensus. So that's what I would suggest, which is not very much, I suppose, for what the person asked. With regard to my closing remarks, I think there's no doubt that shipping has come a long way, and I think globalization has transferred the way we do business, and new powers have emerged in the shipping world, and obviously we have the issue of open registers. I think that to address this particular issue, there is a need, obviously, to enhance capacities in these countries which require this assistance. And in this respect, I think the issue of regional cooperation, which we have not touched upon, is particularly important. We have initiatives, for example, in the Mediterranean, where twinning takes place between ports, where you have an exchange of expertise between one port from the north and one port from the south, and these are initiatives which I think will bear fruit in the long run. With regard to issues which, if I look into a crystal ball, issues that need to be addressed, I think the issue of criminalization of seafarers in the case of an incident is a very important issue, which IMO is trying to tackle through its legal committee, and has been referred to by my colleague here from the Salvage Union. But also another issue which I think is also important is the issue of piracy, but piracy not for the sake of piracy, but the issue of any, God forbid, catastrophe that might take place as a result of piracy. And that becomes a very difficult situation to deal with, particularly in view of the fact...
Such action, criminalization, or further conventions, would that pass by the IMO, or what is the relevant jurisdiction, organization that would pertain to?
In the case of an incident in such waters, I would think that it's a question of the response. I don't think there will be any new instrument to deal with it.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's a potential problem that we need to also think about. We will obviously, and I think the long-term solution to that is obviously ensuring that the region is stable enough and bring it up to speed.
Themselves.
Yeah.
Willem?
Yeah. Well, there were certain questions about the bad guys, the voyous de mer, the flags of convenience. Just a word about this. In addition to all the legislative action through IMO and otherwise, there is another way of approaching these problems, and that is by blaming and shaming, name and shame the bad guys, the instrument of transparency. It's quite a powerful instrument, and it is already 7-8 years ago that France and the European Commission took the initiative to create an organization called Equasis. It's a small organization in which also a number of other quality-minded maritime administrations participate. Japan, the US Coast Guard, several European flags. And the objective is to bring on screen, through the internet, all ship inspection reports. So you can click on the screen, find the ship, and you can exactly see what is the inspection history of this ship. Has the ship been detained very often? Were there many technical malfunctions found? And who has certified this ship? So also the inspector will be exposed. An inspector saying everything is okay, and later on it turns out that this ship was heavily corroded. So it is about naming and transparency as a weapon. I believe you mentioned that the reputation of these operators is a very important asset, and hurting them in their reputation is perhaps as effective as imposing fines or all kind of legal sanctions.
Thank you, Willem. We've come to the end of our session, and I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot. And I've always said that the most important thing when one is in a meeting or a conference of this kind is how many new things have I learned? How many ideas has it stimulated in me to take further to the next step? And I think you will agree with me, this panel has been exceptional in that respect, and I ask you to give them a big hand. Thank you very much.